right, folks, let's get started.
Well, I'm used to drinking water that was recycled. Well, no, I said he's back home.
I know, it's the two of them I got to worry about. Well, and then Brian, but he sat alone, so he's safe.
I'm still here.
Okay, well, welcome, folks. We've got a large full house and some folks hopefully streaming as well to the first of two nights of CROA forums for the 2019 election. We have three of our great candidates here tonight. A couple folks couldn't join us, but one of them did leave a letter that I will read shortly. But just kind of give the background in that of tonight's, I guess we'll call it an event. And first of all, I'm Adam Parrish, former board member, chair of the Parks and Rec Committee, so for those who don't know me. But this will be a live feed tonight on our streaming service and then available for replay later so you can dissect every moment should you want to. It's the first of two events. And then again, like I mentioned, a couple of the candidates who are not here tonight were offered the ability to make a statement, which I will read. One of them did. Questions were submitted both online as well as from the audience tonight. There's a little basket, so if you didn't enter a question and you want to, please do so. We'll try to get through as many as possible because there's a lot of folks in the audience, which is great, so hopefully a lot of good questions. And then there are some time parameters. So initially we'll start with 3 minutes per answer as well as 3 minutes for an opening statement. If we feel like that's running a little bit long, we can cut that down because we only have 3 folks tonight. And then the order to answer questions was randomly determined ahead of time among them. So Steve, did you give me that list? Well, we'll go with a winging then, so on that. So it'll be random at least in terms of that. And then, so I think that's it. So let's start with opening statements, and we will go with, what's your favorite number?
3.
Okay. Leslie, we will start with you then.
Just to verify, we're doing 3 minutes, right?
We're doing 3 minutes, correct, folks?
Do I just do it here?
Yes, that's it, right there. You've got a microphone and welcome. So, so opening statements first, and we will start with Leslie Reynolds.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. My name is Leslie Reynolds, but a lot of people call me Joe. And another fun fact is I live next door to Clark and Kathy Griswold. No, wait, Whitmire. Our street is also called Candy Cane Lane. I'm asking for your vote so that you can, so I can be in the room where the charter is being rewritten, or the community to reevaluate and rewrite the charter. The charter is a fundamental basis for our community, and we're growing so much and so rapidly that a lot of times the charter isn't keeping up with us. And so I have done this a number of times before, and I see that the Disney experiment called Celebration is constantly growing and developing. And I've just spent a lot of time reading our charter that we have currently, and some things are just missing. And so I want to be involved with that. It's the technical and environmental advances that are challenging. And it's important that we still keep that old-time small town feeling, and to revise the charter so that it's more fair and more reasonable to people would be a really, really great thing. My passion has been to help the communities develop. I've been involved with military for over 30 years. I have actively participated in creating programs for Army families to help them understand and grow with the Army, because we went through a big blast of a whole bunch of wars and things that we were unprepared for, and then suddenly we needed to create programs that helped people understand what was happening to them and what they could do to help their spouses and the Army, and what the Army could do to help them. And so writing and rewriting constitutions, 4 different military reservations, has helped me understand how technical it can be and how important it is to get it right. So I want to be able to participate in that. I want to be in the spearhead of modernization, innovation, and fellowship. And I have joy and privilege of 7 years of living in this town, and to a lot of people 7 years is nothing. But to me, it's a lifetime. If you want someone that will work really hard and hard for fairness and for community. Please vote for me. My name is Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. David?
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for hosting this event. My name is David Anderson, and as you've read in my background statement and hopefully observed over the last couple of years, my life has been one of service. From my background as a college administrator and then an activist faculty member, and then ever since moving here, I've gotten involved in service. Probably 2 months after arriving, getting involved, having the opportunity to serve on the Recreation Committee, and then having the honor to sit at one of these tables a couple of years ago and be elected to serve on the board, and then having the honor to serve as our community's president over the last year. And I must point out that in this, there's certainly tremendous opportunities, tremendous challenges, a very rich and full agenda, but it's been a board of 7. For my last 23 months on the board, it's been a board of 7. We collaborate, we dialogue, we disagree on things, but my aim has been to seek consensus. My overall thrust that I would continue, should I have the honor to serve you again for another 2 years, is one of engaged planning. Now, we all know about the 5 pillars. I'll come back to those in a moment. I'm going to offer 7 themes that are important to what I have done over my career, all of my career, 40-some years, which I am continuing, and I call it investing in lifetimes. That's the slogan, investing in lifetimes. So one of the themes I would emphasize, which I have emphasized over the last 2 years, is one of communication, being positive and proactive. A second theme is engagement. That's all about our residents. That's about you. That's about volunteerism. That's about being a part of creating the community of tomorrow. Another is accountability, whether that's through technology or management contracts or agreements, but it's accountability. Efficiencies. We want to be as cost-effective as we can. Yes, we have depends how you count it, $4 or $5 or $6 million budget. It depends if you have trash in there or not. But it's in that realm, and so we do want efficiencies. We want collaboration, we want health, and then I believe in positivism. Again, with our 5 pillars, technology, education, place, community, and health. If you read about my history, again, as an academic and as an administrator, and then looking over the last 2 years on the board, you'll see the evidence of that. John Gardner had a quote. It's about a healthy community. I'll save that for later, but my thrust is that we are stronger and we are better when we work together for a shared common purpose. That's my timer, and that's probably Steve's timer too. So I'll end that there. Thank you.
Good thing they messed up.
Mine's just faster than yours? Thank
Cindy?
you. It's done.
Maybe.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who took the time to come here tonight. We do have a nice crowd. And also those of you who will watch from home. My name is Cindy Swisher. You might remember me as an also ran in last year's CROA election. I came in 5th, which qualifies, I guess, as a close but no cigar, and that's just fine. Hopefully I'll get a little closer this time. I'm originally from Northwest Indiana and spent 28 years as a banker. I was a banking center manager and vice president. I was a liaison between the bank and government entities. I was their go-to person in the bank if they were looking for new accounts or lending services. I was a small business lender and a personal lender. I did all kinds of, I worked in administration for a long time, and I did all kinds of projects. I trained managers, other managers in sales techniques, new products. I developed and monitored a program intended to enhance teller performance and provide them a clear career path where they had criteria to move from one level of teller to another. I designed and compiled a product policy and procedures manual for the branch network. I did a lot of the communication writing for the entire branch whenever they came out with a new product and stuff like that. I was on many, many boards. I served on the the Exchange Club, which is kind of like a Rotary, only different. For 2 terms, the American Institute of Banking, I was a vice president of education and an instructor. Lakeshore Business Professional Women's Club, I was the treasurer, and I was on the board for the National Arthritis Association in Northwest Indiana. After 15 years, I think I have a pretty good idea what makes this community tick. I believe that my banking background, coupled with my experience working at Town Hall, puts me in a unique position to make decisions that not only make good business sense, but are also in the best interest of the community. Now, there's I know there's many of you out there who would call this a conflict of interest, but in my mind, having worked for Town Hall, that's a big advantage, because I've seen both sides of the coin. And you know, Debbie McDonald also worked for Town Hall. It's been 4 years since I've worked here. Debbie actually quit Town Hall to run. She's had 2 successful terms, I think. All I ask is that if you give me the chance to do the same, I will do my best, as Debbie has. And I can also bring a historical perspective, because I've been in town 15 years. I worked here for all those years. So I've got a lot of the history that maybe some folks don't. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Vanessa also left us a statement tonight. She had a family emergency that arose, so I'm going to read that statement. It'll be timed, although it certainly doesn't appear long enough to be over the 3 minutes. These are Vanessa's words. I apologize for not being able to attend this evening. I had a family emergency which required my assistance. I plan to attend the food truck event on Friday and the forum next week. Meanwhile, please feel free to reach out to me. My husband, daughter, and I moved here from Ohio in 2010. The convenience of being walking distance to schools, restaurants, and community events is of great appeal to us. The friendships we've developed and the opportunities to engage in our community over the last 8 years have reinforced our commitment to celebration. 5 years ago, the multi-generational aspect of celebration appealed to my parents, and they moved here to be close to us. We love there are opportunities for families of all types to thrive here. Since living in Celebration, I've been very active with the Celebration K-8 through SAC, the School Advisory Council, the PTA, and the Osceola County School District. As a board member of the Celebration Foundation, I was the co-chair for both Campus Express, which helps expose middle and high school students to post-secondary opportunities, and WINGS, Women's Initiative Nurturing Girls' Strength, which helps to expose girls to women in leadership. As a CROA board member, I worked with fellow board members to ensure the success of the Celebration Strategic Plan, including advocating on behalf of Celebration residents to the county entities, the CCDD, County Commission, Police and Fire, and the school district. Ultimately, the CROA board cannot dictate priorities to the county. However, those entities affect our quality of life and home values. It is therefore the responsibility of the CROA board to advocate and communicate to ensure our community grows in the best interest of the homeowners. I'm passionate about Celebration and the people who live here. I love our kids, are close to school, and have places to safely play. This is truly a multi-generational community where kids and grandparents are close. Addressing the needs of residents of all generations are important to me every day. And again, this was Vanessa Winter's statement. So without further ado, we'll get into the excitement of questions. So since Leslie kicked us off, let's have David do the first one. This is, one of the responsibilities of a CROA director is to set the goals of the community. What goals would you set for CROA over the next 2 years?
So what is our time on this? Are we doing 3 minutes?
3 minutes, yep.
So we're doing that for each question, okay. So when I look at the next couple of years, what I think has happened over the last 2 years is what I would want to help continue, and that's an engaged process. We are shifting, in the board in the last year, we've shifted to a larger strategic planning vision. So boards turn over, there's half or up to half of the board, maybe a little more in some years, turning over every year. And that makes it hard. When the board sets goals, which is great, this year we have 6 goals, last year it was 5 or 6, year before 5 or 6, that's great, but with this turnover, that's hard to have the broader continuity. So for me, having larger, longer lasting goals as part of a strategic plan, I think is vital. So that would be one of my main initiatives. Another is to ramp up even more our communication. I'm very pleased. I know there was dissension in the community over the last year about whether to shift from a newspaper to a magazine, the Celebration News. I'm very, very pleased with the outcome of that. It's, to me, a very attractive and functional look that serves us well as a community, and I think it serves us to the outside audience, which I think is very important. So I want to see even more communication. We have helped to orchestrate a website revision and renewal. That needs to be even more robust and functional. So to me, a priority, again, is within the strategic planning and the communication is integrating all that to get the community to feel more like a community. We have a marvelous community. We have an absolutely marvelous community. We are one of 345,000 community associations in America. We are one of 345,000. And we are, in my view, a very special community. And we have the opportunity to be demonstrably different. We are different, and I think it can be even more different with, again, an engaged community, good communication, strong strategic planning, and a sound and open discussion process through that. So that's what I would have as my framework for the next 2 years.
Thank you, David. Leslie, how would you answer the question of one of the responsibilities of CROA directors to set the goals for the community? What goals would you set for CROA over the next 2 years?
I agree with David that community is the ultimate I think why people moved here was because they thought that there was going to be a lot of community here, and there is. I'm amazed at how many people come out for all of the different activities, and I love the fact that there's so many generations. We used to joke about it a long time ago when my husband and I were young. We lived in a community where there were nearly deads and newlyweds and everything in between. And here there are the opportunity for a lot of people to have their families here in the same districts, the schools. I see a lot of grandparents picking up their kids or their grandkids and grandparents going against mom and dad. I see a lot of that, which is funny with my neighbors. I think it's hilarious that I didn't get that opportunity, and I wish I had. And so I'm really happy to see it happening here. I do want to see more effort from everybody wanting to make their front porches more the places to gather, and more participation in opportunities of us being together and being able to enjoy each other. I think all of the different outreach programs that we've got are wonderful, and I think we need to do more in getting volunteers to get out and participate. And with the military background, I was told a long time ago by a man that managed the thrift shop at one place that the reason he had so many volunteers at the thrift shop was because he would walk up to strangers and say, "Would you like to volunteer? We really would like to have you come and volunteer." And I think more so we need to do a lot more of, don't just set it at the table, but walk up to people, because some people are very, very timid. I will use the word timid, where they actually would like to participate, but we need to engage each other more often. And trust me, I'm one of those people, will engage people, and hopefully we'll be able to create more interest in all of the different programs that are available to us. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Cindy?
So, right after the candidates were cut off, there was an orientation session with the candidates. And one of the things that was covered by Jackson was the list of things that the board was working on. And I want to say there were 10, 12 things on there. And as I say, I was surprised to see, but actually I wasn't surprised to see that just about every one of those there was some conversation that took place on each of them 12 years ago. That's how long the stuff, you know, the Parks and Recreation facilities planning thing, just so many that the charter revisions, I mean, so many of those things have just been hanging at one, and I truly don't know what happens. Maybe something more urgent came up and everything shifted, but I would like to really see some of those things come to fruition finally after 12 years. It looks like we're clicking ahead at the Parks and Recreation thing. That seems to be coming along nicely. I'd like to see, and you know, after all this, they did hire a consultant, you probably know. It's going to help work through this process. But I'd like to see some quick fixes out of that. You know, maybe it's just some picnic tables at one of the larger passive parks. We have, is it 48 or 52 passive parks in the community. For those of you who don't know, a passive park is just a little area, maybe has a bench, maybe has a fountain, something like that. But, you know, there's homes around there. Maybe put a picnic bench there. Maybe put a grill there. You know, something just so everybody in the community could be made to feel like their needs are being met, even if it's just in a small way. I'd like to see, well, I'm sure that that's going to be looked at as well, a larger community center, and also, if I'm going to dream, a venue for the arts. And I think that if we could find a place to do that, I think we could probably get it to pay for itself long-term, because we could rent it out for dance recitals and maybe use it for a community theater. Years ago, when we moved here, there was a community theater that was performing at the high school. And then we lost that venue. And then some of us in town formed another theater group. And we were performing at the grade school here. And then we lost that venue. It would just be nice to have a place to do things like that, for the Celebration Community Chorus to perform, for us to have other events that wouldn't, you know, depend on rain and all that kind of stuff. Again, that's a dream, but I'd like to see something like that too. So anyway.
Thank you. So for folks in the audience, if you haven't submitted questions, there were little pieces of paper. Please do so in the basket. I'll be checking. We've only had a couple so far, so don't hold back. But the next question we'll move on to is, what do you believe the original vision of Celebration was, and how closely do you think Celebration today aligns with that ideal? Leslie, would you mind kicking us off? It's only 3, so it's going to be a quick little round robin.
Sure, no problem. What was the original? Marceline, Missouri. I think Disney was looking for Celebration to be Marceline, where the kids could run down to the drugstore and get goodies and know that they were safe, and that families could walk around on the sidewalks. We have over 16 miles of sidewalks and trails here. I wonder how many of us walk 16 miles in a month. And I think there's so many opportunities for us to get out and do things. I agree with the benches theories and the picnic tables. I had a picnic table in one of our last duty stations, and I was surprised that sometimes I would come home and there would be neighbors sitting there, because that was a really great place to hang out, underneath the pine tree and at the picnic table. And if people felt like they could participate, that's great. When I lived in Hawaii, if you saw somebody doing a luau in one of the parks, I was told by all of my Hawaiian friends, just go up and grab a plate and fill it up. And people would be more than happy to have you there. And they didn't know who you were, and they didn't care. And I think more and more we need to get back to that feeling that we're all part of a great big huge family, and we can walk up and participate in whatever activity is going on. But we have to create opportunities. I think Walt wanted us to create opportunities for people to do these kinds of things. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Thank you, Leslie. Cindy, what are your thoughts on the vision versus where we are today?
Well, I think that his vision was to kind of take a step back in time. I think that's, why all the houses have porches. He envisioned people coming and sitting on their porches at night and chatting with their neighbors and chatting to the kids that are walking by. Two neighborhoods I've lived in, you don't see a lot of that. Everybody tends to be, in their house, but I think that's just a sign of the times. But I think he envisioned a utopia, where, like you said, where kids could, kind of like it was when I was growing up, kids went out and played, you didn't have to worry about them, you knew the neighbors were looking out for them. If you were a kid, you knew you better not be doing anything stupid because your buddy's mother was going to see you, and sure as heck they're going to tell your mom or dad. I think that's the way it was meant to be. It's not quite there, and again, it's not our community. It's just there's so many things on TV that are just so scary, the things that happen, with, kids and robberies and break-ins and, da-da-da. But that being said, I still think that this is a great community, and there's a great community feel here, and I think we need to build on that. Like Leslie said, we need to do things that will bring everybody together so people get to really know their neighbors and depend on them. I was thinking about, when you were talking about the Hawaiian luau, we were vacationing one time in the hotel we were staying at had a fire pit. And we noticed that these people, the first couple nights we were there, were always around this fire pit, cocktails and whatever. So next thing you know, it's like, I'm going to go and talk to those people by the fire pit. So I take my cocktail and I go down. Pretty soon, Tim and Chris are in the room going, where'd Cindy go? She's down there talking to those people at that fire pit. They got their cocktails when we went to, it would be nice to have, in each neighborhood, someplace where people could just, would encourage them to come out and just sit and talk and relax and get to know their neighbors rather than sitting in the house watching TV, even, like I said, volunteer program. I'm all for that. We used to have hundreds of volunteers. We used to have a party for them every year. Volunteers make it happen. Then all the special events went away, and then the volunteers went away, so you lost that, sense of community. So I'm for anything that will bring this community to where Walt envisioned it, and I hope I can help do that.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
David, you want to round us out?
Sure. From having attended some lifelong learning sessions, I learned that the plot that Celebration on was the airport that Walt envisioned. I do not think that that's what we want to have. We did not want to be the airport. His design of Epcot is not what Epcot is today. But I think what Walt envisioned, and then what the planners of Celebration then did, was built a community that was gathering together the best and creative minds. Cindy's word of dream. What's the dream? I think they created that. I think they had a very good process. It hasn't all come to fruition. I think the 5 pillars are marvelous. I think the community we have here, I have not experienced elsewhere. In prior communities, yes, it was further north, but even in the middle of summer, noted I did not walk across the street barefoot to someone else's front porch. That just did not happen. The instant community, the feeling here is spectacular. So how well are we doing? I think we're doing real well. John Gardner, the quote I intended to read at the opening statement, said in the inaugural issue of the Celebration Journal, "A healthy community reaffirms itself continuously. It builds its own morale. It may face up to its flaws and tolerate criticism, but basically it has confidence in itself." I think we're doing pretty well. I think we're constantly looking, we're constantly striving, we're constantly dreaming. We will get better. The envisioning of Celebration 25, the event that the foundation marvelously put on and engaged a lot of people in October, that we'll be building on. I think that's exciting. So I think we're doing pretty doggone well, replicating a lot of the planning process that went into it, continuing dreaming, building on our optimism and hope. I think that in the last 30 seconds, which is probably rising shortly, is that where we need to, and the opportunity we have, is how do we create a better, more inclusive, appropriate community for our aging community? And that's 2 prongs. Our structures are aging and our human factors are aging. And so it's, again, paying real close attention to that, and how do we build on that, continue community, continue the intergenerational, continue walking across our streets, whether it's with a fire pit or cocktails or alternative beverages or whatever it is, building on that positive dreaming community.
Great, thank you, David. So now we're going to get well, that's probably going to be interesting to a lot of folks in the room, and that's how would you effectively and objectively evaluate current management and the potential of a future RFP process when that contract with CCMC, the current management company, comes to renewal, which I believe will happen during the winter's terms. Cindy, do you want to kick us off?
Oh, no.
Would you please like to kick us off?
But that's only fair, I guess.
That's fair.
How would I go about evaluating management? Well, I think you're talking about, well, I don't know what you're talking about exactly. I mean, there's management, the people like Steve and Susan and who do the day-to-day management. There's the management company that they work for. So I'm not, I guess maybe it's all-encompassing, or I can make a.
Well, I think in this case, the folks are really trying to get to the heart of the RFP process, and how do you look at that? So
I'm very much, and if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of guy. Change, maybe. Tweak a little bit, maybe. But if you've got a business partner that you've had for 20-some odd years, it doesn't make sense to me to change for the sake of changing. Another thing, I like old sayings, you get what you pay for. That's another one. People can offer you, when people are looking to get their foot in the door, and you compare it to a job interview. All of you have been on job interviews. And you may or may not have just kind of, maybe exaggerated a little bit of what you've done in the past, or, thrown something in there that wasn't exactly true. If somebody wants your business, or, wants that, they're going to do whatever they can do to get their foot in the door. So, and that would include, maybe offering the same thing for less. Sometimes you find out that it's not exactly the same thing, because it's not. So you're getting what you pay for. If you want this extra thing that you had before, then you're going to have to pay extra for it, and it all ends up being the same thing, I like the idea of the communication that management has with the board. I'm assuming, David, that you still have a weekly meeting, or somebody from the board has a weekly meeting with the staff? No? They used to. I liked that idea because it kept everybody engaged in what was going on, what the latest thing is. But I think communication between the residents, the board, the people that staff town hall, and the management company needs to work, and that's what's key. And as far as RFP, again, if it's not broke, I wouldn't fix it. Tweak it maybe, but I wouldn't spend the money.
Okay.
Unless something horribly wrong, that's horribly went wrong. I just qualify that.
David?
So there's two parts of the question. One is, how do I think management is doing, and the other part is about an RFP process. What would happen for whomever gets elected to this board will be part of a decision-making, the beginnings of a decision-making process about an RFP process. The contract is scheduled to run, it's a 4-year contract, is scheduled to run to December of 21. The term of whomever is elected would end in March of 2021. But decisions would be made at that point. So in going to that part of the question first, when that question arose a couple of years ago when I was first on the board, initially I was all about RFP, and then I thought, I'm not sure that we're ready to, it's part of Cindy's point, we're not ready to open that up and go through all of that. It wasn't a matter of having an open process, it was a matter of, for me, getting confirmation that should a new contractor come in, do we have all the written policies and procedures so someone else can come and do those so that it appears seamless and is seamless for the residents? That would be my aim. That is quality of service for our residents. And so then we worked through a rework of the process and wrote what we thought was a more sound management contract and negotiated that for 4 years. So how would I stand in near the end of 2 years? I would be in favor of having an RFP process. I think that is a healthy process to do. It's not disagreeing with Cindy, but I think going through that process helps to make sure we're doing for the residents what is current and what is best for our residents. Bottom line is it has to be best and most effective for the residents. I don't want to negate the other part of the question. That's something I think that the board is constantly doing. We chose to not have a weekly meeting, to Cindy's point, so that we have a board of 7 having discussions about the topics. Should I be re-elected to the board, part of the discussion, I think, for a new board would be what should be the appropriate communications to make sure things are functioning smoothly and cleanly for the residents. So in short, how is the management doing? I think they're doing a very good job. I think a lot of things have been done. The lifestyle services have been increased. We're seeing more activities thanks to JR and his team. We're seeing the quality of landscape services increase thanks to Todd and his team. We're seeing overall management processes getting streamlined. So I think, and again, we shared the feedback, and they're seeing that openly in a public setting. So always room for improvement, but quite good.
Thank you, David. Leslie?
Hi. For a person that comes in and poor Steve, poor Todd, they see me and they're like, oh boy, here she comes again. They have been wonderful. When Stephen and I first moved here, we were introduced to Pat, and she was a diamond. She was amazing. She knew everybody. She was real effective and efficient in getting back to you. And then when she left, everybody was worried. And Steve stepped in and stepped right up to the plate and hit a home run. He is very aware of what's going on around here. He does his darndest. He has sacrificed a lot for this community. The company that he works for has over 220 different communities like us, and he gets an opportunity to reach out when there's a problem here and look at another community and say, how did you guys resolve it? What did you do? What were the problems? And so he's always in contact with other people trying to find out things, which I applaud the organization for doing exactly that. It's not, we're all by ourselves, we're a little tiny community in Celebration. We have an opportunity to find other sources that can help us solve some of our little problems. And problems are going to arise. I don't care what anybody says. A fire happens, you've got a problem. So those are just things. But I think it's interesting that this is a large group, and they were generous enough to give us Steve. And poor Todd puts up with me almost on a regular basis because I'm always bugging him about lights. I'm always bugging him about the puppy park. And I'm, bless him. And they're patient. And I know I'm a difficult person to please, but they are patient. And they have our community at the heart. Our best interests are their sacrifices every day, and they work hard for us. I want to say improvements, yeah, but we all know that. I mean, we as a community can participate in helping solve and resolve issues as they come along. So I just think we just need to keep working, and we need to start getting us together as groups and figuring out what is the problem and then solving it. The old saying used to be, don't come to the table with a problem and not have a solution. And that's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. So changing gears a little bit, what is the role of the CROA board in reference to involvement and relationships with the greater community. So this would be Osceola County, the Enterprise Community Development District, the Celebration Community Development District, the school district, Lexan, and the Celebration Foundation, to name but a few. David, why don't you kick us off with that?
Yeah, I think it's an important role. Our main role is, as a homeowners association, to protect the values of our homes and to maximize the quality of life for our community. I think there's some tremendous opportunities outside of our borders, and actually inside our borders when you deal with the CDD, the ECDD, the Celebration Foundation. I think there's been some history. We know about that. There still is some history with some, whether it's silos or turfs or something. I think we need to all work together collaboratively and in a positive spirit. We need to have an open process and talk. I think the opportunities outside of our borders, whether it's in the county government center or the sheriff's office, we need to make our voices known. We need to find ways to have this as a win-win, again, with the county, with the sheriff, with the schools. We're all here together. We pay our tax dollars, but we have some issues with security, and frankly, with security, if you look at how the sheriff's office is funded, preventative crime is the bottom of the list. They would love to do more preventative crime work, but dealing with homicides, dealing with crime is a higher priority, and I think we would all agree that they need to deal with that. We also want to have them do patrols, but that just doesn't cut the mustard in terms of the priorities. And so how do we help solve that so we have a more visual police presence? And I don't mean to have a police community, but how do we have a higher security presence to keep, the folks that are doing the things that we don't like, how do we keep them down? So how do we work collaboratively with the sheriff? How do we work collaboratively with the county? I think we have some evidence of that in the last year, and hopefully that'll grow in the years to come. The opportunities with the foundation, they've really done a lot of good things for the community, particularly with Thriving and lifelong learning and some other initiatives. So I think that can grow, and whether it's more with the arts, whomever is the partner with that, the schools opportunities, whether it's sharing resources or initiatives. And I think we just need to be talking that and finding ways that we are working together for a positive end result for our homeowners and for all of our residents, the people who are not homeowners too, the renters, if you will.
Thank you, David. Cindy, thoughts on working with the community?
It's my understanding that the board now has a representative that it's their task to go to the CDD meetings or the school supervisor. I think that's brilliant, because you get somebody who is there, and you get the whole story, firsthand, not second or third or fourth hand. I think that's brilliant. I'm not a politician. I don't have kids, so I don't know that I'd be a good fit for either of those spots. But I think we have a really good opportunity to bond with the different entities in town. It may take a little bit more work with some rather than others. I totally agree with David. The foundation is doing just wonderful things. I volunteer, Mike knows, I volunteered with Thriving for quite a long time, and started their daily programs at the Jones Room, and was contacting people for speakers and all that kind of stuff. They do great things. I think we've got and security also, to mimic what David said, I think we've got a real great thing with Jerry. And, security, volunteers, maybe we need to work with Jerry to renew like a community watch or neighborhood watch or whatever they used to call them, and have people volunteer to kind of, just be a little, or at least make the people that live in the different communities cognizant of things that they should be looking for. Things that might be, that when you see it, it doesn't necessarily set off bells, but it could be suspicious. I'm sure Jerry would be just thrilled to give us some insight and maybe even, be on some kind of a committee or something to to get that going. And again, partnerships with the schools, I think that's a great idea. I mean, why don't we advertise the school plays, the high school plays that are wonderful in the Friday Flash? I'm sure it's because nobody at the school thinks about it. And I know they want people to come to their plays. I've been to several, and, maybe the place is half full or whatever, but, I mean, it's close to home, it's a cheap night out, it's, enjoyable, kids are always fun to watch, Somehow we need to reach out to those different entities in town and say, hey, we want to help you publicize your stuff. You got, you have a concert, let us know, we'll publicize that for you. Let us help you. And then maybe when we need volunteers, we can tap them back and say, hey, could you send us a bunch of seniors? We've got something, porch and yard sale going on. We need, 20 kids to stand at intersections and direct traffic, or I mean, something, I don't know what. But, yeah, that's it.
Great. Thank you, Cindy.
You're
Leslie?
Okay, I did some homework. Sorry. This is this week's magazine, and inside of it is good old Jerry's sheriff thing. And if you look at it and you read it, he gives you a breakdown about how to call 911 or what to expect from 911. But what I found fascinating was this little gizmo. And he says, now pay attention, because there's 2 Osceola counties, one's not in our state. So he says, this is the star that you want to be looking for. It's an app that's free that we can put on our phones that if we need to call, and then there's a whole bunch of different breakdowns. And I thought, this is great. You read his whole article and it tells you what's going on. And then Miss Chowdhury, she gave a breakdown and said, this is what we're trying to do for Osceola County for us. She talks about they're trying to put a police building down near our area. Everybody kind of knows what I'm talking about. They're working on those kind of things. I think the only reason they're working on those things is because CROA has reached out to them and said, we'd like a bigger presence of the sheriff's department or of the county involved with the celebration area. And I feel strongly about, we just need to keep presenting our argument, because somewhere they came up with a whole lot of money that we didn't know that they were willing to give to us to create this opportunity. And we're going to have to work in tandem with them and continue over a few more years to get this thing up and running, so that we have that security force so much closer than Jerry, in one of his past articles, and I loved reading his articles, said that it takes an officer this long to go down to Kissimmee to fill out all the paperwork and to put somebody in the tank, and then to come back here to be anywhere near us. And instead he's going to be able to be across the street. They can do it in 10 minutes and they can be back over here. Isn't that wonderful? Now we just need to keep working with them, and CROA board is doing that, but we need to keep thinking in those, I don't know, in that rhythm, because we've got the dance almost there. We just need to figure out a few more steps. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've talked about some big macro issues. Here's a micro one that was a letter written in. What would you do to ensure competent training of community standards inspectors so that the residents aren't left to guess when they get ambiguous letters stating, quote, your house is dirty, unquote, where, or you need more mulch, where, etc. Cindy, what are your thoughts on some competent covenants training?
I happen to know the covenants person. No surprise there. Nobody likes to be told that that their house isn't pristine. I don't know how many people. This is the first and probably the only homeowners association I will ever live in. This concept was completely foreign to me when we moved here. So I wasn't used to people saying, no, you can't plant those petunias there. They're not approved, you know. Can't put that pot there. The only thing, I mean, they know what they're looking for, and I think a lot of times people say, well, you know, I got this letter, but look at so-and-so 2 blocks down, you know, why does their house still look like that? You know, why aren't they on them? Well, they probably are. We just don't know it, and they just don't care. And probably figured, you know, I don't care, find me. Stick it on my HOA assessments, I don't care. When the house sells, it'll get paid off then. Don't care, you know. I don't have the money, the time, you know, whatever, to do whatever to my house. It's not important to me. I got a letter when I ran for when I announced my candidacy, and I got a letter saying that we needed to power wash. We live in one of those cute little cul-de-sacs that have the wall that goes all the way around, that we needed to either power wash or paint our wall, and either paint or replace the numbers on the house. I never look at the numbers on my house. I know where I live. So I went out with my magic marker, and I painted them. And then I thought, maybe I could do better. Went out and bought a thing of nail polish, black. And they're painted, good to go. We did have the wall painted. The landscaper came today and trimmed there, and now the whole thing is black again from that. But, I mean, that's just things the way things are. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the process. And I hate to say that, you know, people, if you're confused and you want to know exactly where or exactly what, then pick up the phone and call. I mean, they're there. I mean, they love to talk to people. You know, they hate being the bad guy. You know, a lot of times it's like, you know, a quick fix. You know, a lot of times, you know, maybe it's just one area. Maybe you didn't even realize that there wasn't any mulch there anymore. And when you go look at it, well, yeah, I guess that does look bad. You know, so I don't think it's the training so much. I think there just needs to be more communication. You know, when you get the letter, if you don't understand it, you don't like what it says, pick it up. I mean, argue with them. Go ahead. You know, that's what they're there for. And maybe they'll come back and look at it and say, well, you know, you're right. Or I can't paint it today, but I can paint it, you know, 6 months from now. You know, I'm not working as steady as I was. I mean, just communicate with them, and everything will be fine. I think they're good. Okay.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Leslie, thoughts on covenants and inspections?
I have a person living in my house that's on the covenants board. But since that person has been on the covenants board, we've received 4 different notices. And he's had to make some changes. I think a lot of people assume that they're getting picked on, and we need to realize that Mary Jane's doing her darndest to be as community friendly as possible, but she's not going to let somebody let their house fall out of covenants and not say something to them. And I think all of us appreciate what she does. I think that the sidewalk problem is something that we can resolve, but I think we need to do it as a CROA board, because a lot of people don't walk on their front lawns or their covenants, or they don't do this, or they don't walk on the side of their house and look up. I mean, most people's eye view is 10 feet, and that's about as far as their eyes are going to go up. So when she reminds us that something's wrong, we just need to walk outside and look at it and go, she's right. I just need to take some time and fix that. And so whatever we can do to be helpful to the rest of the community, we should be. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I think there's 3 parts on that question. I mean, at first glance, it's about how do we get our inspectors trained properly. I mean, so I do think there's an answer. I think there's an answer to that because, first of all, I think that whole process is understaffed. So I think there needs to be greater staffing, and that's going to be even more important as our community continues to age. I mean, we are going in one direction. We're going to age. And so structures age in place, and we need to keep them up. And that's a lot of why many of us move here. We like how it looks and feels. So as you have notable inspectors, do they have different viewpoints? So there needs to be consistency. So, I mean, there may be a training process, so you send inspectors to the same site and see if they see the same things and come up with the same assessment. Ideally, the answer is yes, they have the same assessment. So a second part in answer to that question is, what are they looking for, and when does it meet the standard, and when does it not meet the standard? So that's a matter of better educating all of us as residents, so we know. I mean, I didn't, when our mailbox was hit for the second time, and we had to, in a few years, had to replace it, and then find letters that were appropriate. And then I discovered 2 weeks ago that the letters that were put on 4 months ago had faded. It's like, how can gold fade off? So we had black on black when it was gold on black, and fortunately we didn't get a letter for that because we caught it and immediately had extras. But so we all, and where do you find those letters? It's not easy. So we know that. So, but I think our covenants committee has done a great job in getting proactive articles out there. Maybe those get enhanced a little bit, like, and no addresses included. Here's a not acceptable one, here's an acceptable one, here's what we're looking for. So that would be part of it. And then the third thing, I know that the Covenants Committee's done a marvelous job trying to deal with this, and they're continuing to improve, but what are our processes? How can we have processes that communicate with the residents better? Within 1 week of buying our house, as an out-of-town owner who had immediately leased it, then we get a letter. Long distance. It says you're in violation. It's like, what? We bought a house free and clear, and everything was clean, and all of a sudden something's not acceptable, and I don't even know if the tenants had moved in yet, but we got a letter. It's like, is this how you treat new homeowners? And the answer is, well, yeah, but no longer. Well, that's how it was. That's how it was. It's no longer that way. It's a different tone, and we can even do better to be friendlier at the same time being accountable, because that's what's going to keep us looking the way we are, and again, the community that we love and cherish. End.
Okay. Thank you, David.
On time.
On time. So, the question is pretty straightforward. Have you read the charter and the bylaws? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how familiar are you with them? Cindy?
So the last time I ran, I said that I was a 10. Then I couldn't remember what Schedule C was, so I backed it down to a 9. And I heard some, stuff. But again, advantage. Part of my job, when I was working for the town hall, required me to have my nose in the charter all the time. The charter, the bylaws, the state statutes. I had my own copy at my desk with little flags like she has here, on things that I was working on or knew I would come across again. One of the things that I did, you may or may not be aware, but as the new service areas are built and come in, there's a supplement to the charter for each of those service areas. And it outlines what their responsibilities are, what CROA's responsibilities are. For those of you who don't know, let me back up again. There's properties in towns called service areas. And what that means is that, they own their townhome or whatever, but CROA has the responsibility for mowing the lawn, the termite service, painting the outside of the buildings, and then, depending where you live, certain other little things. You're responsible for the inside, bugs and all that kind of stuff. So you pay an extra fee for that. So anyway, in looking at all these, and I want to say maybe there were 14 service areas at the time, something like that. Well, another Spring Lake, but Spring Lake was not, but I don't remember how many, but over a dozen. And I worked with the person who was Todd at the time and a consultant and went through every single one of those supplements line by line and made a grid of, if you live here, this is what, you're responsible for, this is what CROA's took, a couple months, but, so, you'd be surprised, I mean, there's just slight little differences in each one. So, I mean, I have to say, I really do know it inside out. Now, I don't look at it as often. I have looked at it recently for something in particular. But relatively speaking, I'm going with 9.
Okay.
Okay.
Leslie?
Oh, I'm not that confident. I've spent some time reading it. I've found a number of challenges. I wrote some notes thinking if I get an opportunity, I'll corner somebody and ask them to explain. But the charter was started in 1995. That's the best, earliest counting that I have. And it gets changed every few years. And it ends in like 2016. I have a lot of questions. I think a lot of things need to be revisited. I think things need to be written in a little bit more, less legalese and more common sense, so that when people do have questions, they don't have to go get a lawyer to figure it out. But I think they've covered an awful lot of the bases, and it's a solid charter. But it's got to be updated. It's got to become more user-friendly. That's what I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
So, question is, how familiar am I with the charter? I don't think I can do chapter and verse like Cindy. And that's pretty awesome. But yes, I'm fairly familiar with the charter and the bylaws. I think actually the intent of the question, or what I'd like to respond to, is the charter and the bylaws are important. They are founding documents. Certainly they are not particularly user-friendly, but they are the documents we have. It is time for a charter review. I know the board has been talking about that. I anticipate that that's going to be happening in the coming year. What gets reviewed, what gets proposed as changes, again, and then what has to be voted on by the residents will be determined, I think, within the next year. But I also think that it's, two other things are important. One is we're not just governed by the charter and the bylaws, we're also governed by statute, state law. So that's important for us to be familiar with, and again, to gather legal counsel as we need that. But the other thing that I think goes beyond what those written documents, as important as they are, is what's the spirit? What's the intent? What's the flavor? What are they trying to accomplish? And it's to help have order to our community, some structure to our community. But I think where things really affect us is how do those get interpreted, and then how do we live and how do we work together within those overall constructs? I don't see those as necessarily impediments. Sometimes they are confusing, but overall what I've found on the board is other things really guide us. Certainly within the law, within ethics, within sunshine and all of that. But it's really working with our hearts and our hard volunteer work for the betterment of our community. So it's that spirit. And that's what's subsumed under I think the bylaws and the charter.
Thank you, David.
Yep.
So this was one of our write-in ones of the night. So this week there's been some discussion both in the building as well as online regarding the CCS, the Celebration Community Services, an entity a majority of board members and residents were unaware of. Mm-hmm. Signatures of the board members have been forged, quote unquote. As a CROA board member, will you further investigate this? Ripped from the headlines.
Of?
In an internet world, you never know, friends. Cindy, why don't you kick us off?
Okay.
You want to start with your no again?
No.
Okay.
I don't engage, but well, first of all, I was at the meeting where this was discussed, the last workshop and then the CCS meeting afterwards. And then I monitor the back porch just to see what's going on, because it's good to know what people are talking about. And I knew that this was going to come up tonight. So, again, advantage. So in 2006 is about the time that Disney pulled out of downtown. They being CROA, wanted to continue having these large-scale events, but didn't particularly want to put the burden on the homeowners. So they created this 501c4 corporation so they could apply for grants to, for at least to cover the advertising for these events. At the time, we had the Pie Festival, we had Posh Pooch, we had the Art Festival, we had July 4th, we had a haunted house for a couple years, and all these things went under Celebration Community Services. It stipulates in the Articles of Incorporation that it would be it's the president, vice president, and treasurer, and then two outside people, two people that don't live in town. So it started off, one of the person's name was Twist, and I remember her name just because it was so odd. And I think she had something to do with the sheriff's department. She was like their spokesperson or something. And then there was somebody else. So when these things went away, then so did the activity with this Celebration Community Services, because there was nothing going on. They just started Posh Pooch up, what, about 4 years ago, I think? So, but in the meantime, you have to file, because it was incorporated, you have to file an annual report with the state on SunBiz. And this is the forged signature part, okay? And I took it, I went online, and I got okay. So you know, the annual report is not a financial statement. I think there's some confusion. People are thinking, like when you're a shareholder, when you own stock, when you have annuities, when you have investments, those companies need by law to provide a financial statement annually, and that's also called an annual statement. This is not that. This report is just to confirm that you're still out there. If the officers have changed, and that's all that was done with that. Every year after the CROA election, somebody goes on there and they go into each entity and say, this is the new president, this is the new treasurer, this is the new whatever, and then there's a place that says electronic signature. No, it's nothing, all you're doing is saying, these are the new officers, and yes, this is still our attorney of record. It's not anything, it's not a big deal. The tax returns were signed all the time. So that's as far as I can go. But there's more.
David, do you want to pick it up?
Sure. We learned about this last week. I'd heard the initials over the years. And it's like, I heard the initials and that was the end of it. And then learned about it really last week and saw the bylaws and the charter for what do you call it, the Articles of Incorporation, the formal legal documents, saw that for the first time, I think last Thursday. So we immediately met the three officers that we found out that we met and basically said, what do we need to do? So then we announced a public meeting for 15 minutes. We wanted to immediately clean up a couple of the financial pieces, and then we're going to pursue it in the future and find out wherever it goes. We're going to learn more. I'm learning tonight the history. Did not know that. We will learn more about this and why it was set up. I inferred that it was set up as a way to get outside funding. I mean, if there was a state or a national or international grant that we wanted for Celebration, that may be the vehicle for that. But we're going to follow the facts where they take us, and we're going to go through that process, have an independent auditor take a look at it, and see where it takes us. And whether the group continues in the future or not, don't know if we need it. We don't know. So to me, it's a matter of, since I don't look at the back porch, I look at official communications and emails and so forth, and I'm not going to rush to judgment. It's going to be a deliberate process. It's going to be sound. It's going to be public, and we'll see where it takes us. I don't know where it's going to end up, but that's all I know. I mean, that's all I know. That's all I know.
David.
That's all I know.
Leslie, any thoughts?
David said, I don't know anything about it. I love a good treasure hunt, so it'll be interesting to learn. I'd like to be in the room where it's being found out. That'll be fun. But, sorry, but I am concerned.
Fair answers from all. Changing topics a little bit. CROA is a homeowners association. People ask it to do many things, maybe some things that aren't handled by the association. In your view, what is the job of CROA? David?
So it is a lot of things. You know, as a homeowners association, it is probably the first place to turn for a resident who does not know, and to try to understand CDD or some of the others. CROA gets the questions, CROA gets the blame, and I think it's important that we start to, I know CROA tries to do that, the magazine tries to do this, the Celebration News, is say, here's what these other entities do. So it's okay to have one stop. I think Cell Service is a great example of that, where technology was put in. I don't care who owns the street light. I'm going to report it, and it gets fixed by whomever the appropriate entity is. So I think that CROA's role is, it is a homeowners association to maintain the property values and to have a good quality of life for our residents. So that is part of that is the lifestyle. Part of that is going to be the coordination and collaboration with other entities within our borders and outside our borders for the betterment of what we pay. We pay higher prices for our homes here, the value, and we want to maintain that. So, but I think our role is to try to, again, help create our dreams, help create the future, maintain the property values, maintain the look, grow the spirit, address, again, the aging population, address intergenerational. It's tried to model good process, model good policies, engage more people. So, if you will, policies, process, people, more volunteers. And again, it might be, hey, here's a volunteer. What your skills or interests are really don't fit here. Maybe you could do something with the schools, maybe something with the hospital, maybe something with the foundation, maybe something with the larger community. So I could see growing volunteers, but CROA can be if you will, like a clearinghouse, and I think that's appropriate. And again, enhancing the quality of life for all of us here.
Okay. Cindy?
Well, I think obviously the first role is to protect the property values. But I also think that CROA needs to work with the community to make this someplace where everybody wants to live. You know, that there's nothing about that, you know, anybody who comes into this town will find something that says, you know, this feels like home. You know, I want to see if I can, you know, if I can't buy here, maybe I can at least rent here, you know, and love the place. I think that I liked what David was saying about the volunteers, and you know, maybe a better word too is ambassadors. You know, we need a group of residents beyond the board and beyond the committees that, you know, can be our ambassadors, you know, to the schools. You know, ideally somebody who has, you know, like a child that's involved in theater there, or the choir or whatever, that will, you know, feed us information. And, you know, when people come in and they, you know, they pick up this and they say, oh, you know, this play is coming up, and, you know, whatever, wow, you know, what a great place, look at the beautiful homes, you know, everything is pristine, everything is great. Where I came from, you know, the house 3 doors down was falling apart, but this is great. And I think that somehow our role is to kind of, best we can, keep our arms around all those positive things that make Celebration what it is, and just keep improving on it and improving on it and improving on it. And there you have it.
Thank you, Cindy. Leslie, you want to round us out?
Sure. If the Celebration News magazine says technology, education, place, health, and community, And then I looked at the CROA board, what is it? Foundation report. It says the board is required and has the fiduciary responsibilities to preserve, protect, and enhance the value of the association's assets as it makes decisions, establish policies, enforce the governing documents, and builds community. Fellowship, right? So that's what CROA is all about. We are trying to build a fellowship community that other people want to live in. And to protect, CROA's job is to protect our rights to have a home, to have a community that supports us and sponsors things that we want to create. So that's what CROA is all about. And I see 1,000 different avenues that we can take to get there, but each one of us has one interest or a couple of interests that they want to follow. And if we can give them the opportunity to follow it, that's great. That's what CROA is all about.
Thank you. Excuse me. So I think we've got time for one more. And we'll kind of let you, this one we can go 3 minutes and 30 seconds if folks want. That way it rounds us out. Extra 30 seconds. Round out your final statement.
Let me have some water.
There you go, get ready. What specifically would you like to champion as a project, initiative, or undertaking during your term? Cindy, why don't you kick us off since you had that big water and you said you were ready?
Actually, I gave this some thought today. So I would like to continue to improve communications. A lot has been done, but there needs to be more. I'm kind of a word nerd. I was one of those kids in grade school who loved to diagram sentences. I don't know if that means anything to anybody else. But suffice to say that when the nun announced that we were going to do that, everybody went, ugh, except me. I was there going, yes! You know, because you take the sentence apart and you put the words, you know, if they're adjectives or adverbs or, you know, whatever. I just love that kind of stuff. And I love to write. I write the articles for the celebration, the celebrators, and for the chorus and stuff like that. But anyway, so it really bothers me when I see misspelled or misused words in our communications. You know, I was one of those people when I was looking at resumes, if I saw something that there was a misspelled word, gone. Because that tells me that that person doesn't have any attention to detail or whatever. Now, I have to say, this is not to slam our communications people, but I mean, there's a lot going on here. And a lot of times you can't afford to have 2 or 3 sets of eyes looking at, you know, everything that is being sent out. So, you know, I get that. But, you know, maybe what we can do, and again, this is just me thinking, we used to have a communications committee. Maybe we reinstate that in some way and let them help create or at least review proofread information before it's communicated to our residents. You know, kind of just a thought, and I don't know how that would work, it's just kind of throwing it out there. I also think that maybe it might not be a bad idea to have 2 different Friday flashes. Of course, you'd call them different things. But one would just have notices about meetings and things like that, you know, important things. And then the other one would just have events. So things don't get all jumped, because a lot of that stuff is in there for several weeks in a row, and you open it up and you yeah, and nothing really sticks. Sometimes you notice something new, sometimes you don't. But it seems to me that I keep seeing that people are, and hearing that people are having trouble finding information, like when a meeting is or where the agenda is. You know, all the meetings could be on there. Click here for the agenda, you know, boom. And if you're looking for a meeting, it's going to be right here. If you're looking for something to do this weekend or next month, it's going to be right here. But anyway, I'd like to just, that's my thing. I'd like to see communications continue to do better and just different things and change things up a little bit. And be professional.
Thank you. David, what about you? What specifically would you like to champion as a project initiative?
I could say ditto and have silence for 3.5 minutes, but
And I'll play the elevator music.
the elevator speech. Actually, what I would love to champion is something that has been on the horizon, and I think it's the next big project. And I do trust the process that Brian Kinzel is heading up on the CROA board with the whole facilities planning process. So I trust that process. Depending on the outcome of that process, what I would love to champion, should it be consistent with the outcome of that process, is a community center. And I can see all 5 of our pillars being part of that. I mean, picture place. Here is a gathering place. Whether it's much like Thriving gathers at times, lifelong learning gathers, there may be committee meetings there may be bridge, some of the things that happen in this building and might end up being in this building, it might not, but place. So a real community center. It might be informal gatherings. It would be health. We can be more proactive with our health. Again, with our aging community and some of our intergenerational thing, what if we had weekly lectures? What if we had brown bag discussions? I mean, what if we had technical training that goes outside of Lifelong? What if Lifelong did more than their 52 classes this spring, up from 42? I got the numbers a little off, but it's up by 20% from last fall. What if we grew that in some new directions? I don't know what that would look like. And if we expanded health beyond intellectual health, how about emotional health, where people really feel connected? How about our spiritual health, and that's not about religion? How about our artistic health and our cultural health? Health broadly defined. So we have place, we have health, education, again, some of the, if you will, the knowledge. Steve did a piece, part of Lifelong, with one of the lectures on breaking the cord, and yes, we followed that, and yes, it's working. We're ready to go to round 2 or round 3 now. But you know, education in new ways, blending in technology. This community center, I don't know what it's going to look like. You know, is it with solar panels, and is it? I don't know. But how do you infuse technology? It's more than 5G. How do we do something that's different? I mean, we can dream it. We can build it. Someone said that years ago. And then, of course, the whole issue of community. A community center, I think it can be very, very, very exciting. So I guess that's my agenda. And I'll stick with it. Again, I trust the process. So it really depends on how that comes out. And I just think there's some tremendous, tremendous opportunities. And these are exciting times. These are very, very exciting times.
Leslie, should you be elected, what specifically would you champion?
Is that the whole question?
As a project, initiative, or undertaking during your term?
I think a community center is what everybody is looking for. I think a place for everybody to be able to gather, to have opportunities for education, to learn technology. I know there's in one community that I lived in for a very short period of time, they actually taught classes on how to use Macs. And they had Macs in the room, and people were looking for the towers. No, the towers aren't in front of you. Those kind of things. I want to see us keep ahead of the curve rather than trying to chase the curve. Because we used to be that way. Our community used to be like that. The place called Celebration was the star on the hill, I guess. And somehow, some way, we're trying to get now where we're the star in the sky, and I think we can make it there. I think there's opportunities for everybody to be able to grow. A gathering place, a community center, that would be a really, really great goal. I would like to see us get there. I would like to work to get there. I would like to be a representative. If people want to talk to me, everybody knows my dog. She's that big old Bernese mountain dog. So if you see me walking around, stop me, talk to me. She'll lay down and she'll be good. And I would like to hear people's recommendations, because I think we might have stopped talking to each other at one time, and now we're asking for you to talk to us again, to give us an opportunity to represent you and to do something that will knock your socks off, make you happy that you're here. That's what's important.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you to all of our candidates tonight. Thank you especially to such a full audience. We don't usually have these as those who come and do these with me often. So without further ado, I think that's it for tonight. But come back next week, same time, same bat channel, for more exciting questions and candidates. So, thank you.
And thank you for an excellent job.